Hello students. So today we will take up the third part of the carboxylic acids chapter, and this will also have some part from the derivatives, that is ethers and epoxides. So let's start with the topic. So here today we will study first about the reactions of derivatives of carboxylic acids. So there are many derivatives. There are acid chlorides, amides, anhydrides, esters. So we will take up each one of them one by one. So let's start with acid chlorides or the acyl chlorides. So if you see the structure of the acyl chloride, so there is COCl. So there are basically two kinds of electron withdrawing group. One is oxygen and the other is chlorine, and both of them are electron withdrawing. So what they do, both of them snatch or seize the electron density towards themselves. So what happens is that the carbon atom becomes highly positively charged or electron deficient, highly electron deficient. So what will happen, if a nucleophile is present, it will immediately attack such carbon. So these two, oxygen and the chlorine atom, they increase the they increase the chances of nucleophilic attack, and that is why this group is acid chlorides are more reactive. Secondly, why they are more reactive, because the chlorine atom, it is a good leaving group. Means if chlorine atom is there in the reaction and some other atom is also there, so it will easily get replaced. It will easily leave the original compound, and that is why again the acyl chlorides are very reactive. Now, if we compare benzoyl or the benzene derivative of the acid chloride with that of the aliphatic member, so we see that the benzoyl chloride is much less reactive than the aliphatic acyl chloride. Why? Because of delocalization of pi electrons, that is resonance effect. So what happens is that because the molecule is more stable, so there is lesser electron deficiency for the nucleophiles attack. Now let us see some reactions of acid chlorides. So first is the reaction with water. So when acid chlorides react with water, it hydrolyzes to form HCl and carboxylic acid. One example is also given over here. If we see alcohol, then these acid chlorides, they react with alcohols to give esters and HCl. So ROH, when it reacts with RCOCl, so HCl will get removed and the product is an ester. Same example is given at the bottom. Then they also react with phenols to give esters. So similar to the alcohol, phenol also react with acid chloride, but this reaction requires presence of a base as the catalyst. Why? Because when the base is present, because phenol is more stable, so it is not very reactive. So to convert it into a more reactive form, that is the phenoxide ion, we need a catalyst, which is the base. So what will it do? It will convert the phenol to phenoxide ion, which will then react with the acid chloride to give respective ester. Then we see the reaction with ammonia and amines. So they react with ammonia to form amides. So one molecule of the ammonium salt, NH4Cl, will get removed and the other. So there are 2 moles of ammonia they are reacting, and one of them is expelled in the form of the ammonium chloride salt, and the other one gets incorporated in the molecule and forms RCONH2, that is amide. Okay. Similarly, if in case of ammonia we are using primary amine or secondary amine, so respectively products will be obtained. In case of primary amine, the product obtained amide will have an alkyl group, so it will be called N-substituted amide. If it is a secondary amine which has 2 already alkyl groups, so if that gets incorporated and forms the amide, it will be named N disubstituted amide. And this reaction, it occurs at room temperature and it gives good yield of the amides. Next is the reaction of acid anhydrides. So acid anhydrides, they when get hydrolyzed, so they break down to form acid, carboxylic acid, and like 2 kind of carboxylic acid depending on the type of the alkyl groups. So if both the groups are symmetrical, like the same groups, then 2 moles of the acid will be formed. Same acid will be formed. Then with alcohols, we know that this reaction, it is very well similar to like we have seen esterification also. So when acid anhydride react with alcohol, then the alcohol ROH, it breaks down such that the oxygen goes to 1 and the hydrogen of the alcohol goes to the other group. So we get two kind of product. One is the ester, other is the carboxylic acid. Example is also given over here. Then reaction with ammonia and amide, and similar reaction is very much similar to that of acyl fluoride. So we get this amide and a salt. Some more examples are also given over here. Then we see the reaction of amides. So among all the derivatives of carboxylic acids, amides are the least reactive. Why? Because they are bad leaving groups. They don't leave very easily. They are poor leaving groups, and that is why they are less reactive towards nucleophilic substitution reactions. Then next we see the reaction with water. So amides, when they hydrolyze in the presence of acid or in the presence of base, the product is always carboxylic acid or a carboxylate. So in presence of acid, the product is carboxylic acid, and in the presence of base, the amide changes to carboxylate or the sodium salt of the carboxylic acid. Then dehydration. Dehydrating agent used is P4O10. So amides, when dehydrated, you can see RCONH2. So O and H2, it gets removed. So what we get? RCN, which is nitrile or cyanide. And this method is very useful for preparing nitriles, which are otherwise not made available by other substitution reactions. Next, we come to a very important reaction, that is Hofmann degradation. So what is Hofmann degradation? It is the reaction of amide with bromine and sodium hydroxide or chlorine in NaOH, and the reaction and the product is an amine. So RCONH2 gets converted to RNH2. So there is one carbon less in the product. So it is also called as chain decrement reaction. That is why it is also called as degradation reaction. So the reaction is given over here. The byproducts are sodium bromide, sodium carbonate, and water. Example is also given. Then reduction with La. La is LiAlH4. So when amides they get reduced, they give amines. So RCO, the carbonyl group, gets reduced to the alkyl group. Then some reactions of esters. So there is acid catalyzed hydrolysis. So it is exactly the reverse of esterification. So acid hydrolysis of esters, it gives carboxylic acid and alcohol. If you see the base catalyzed hydrolysis, so base uses NaOH. So what we get the alcohol plus the sodium salt of the carboxylic acid. But this reaction is different from the acid hydrolysis in that this reaction is not reversible. That one was reversible. This is not reversible. Okay, now this is just for information that soap, it is basically made by alkaline hydrolysis of fats or oils to give the sodium carboxylate, and this reaction is also named under saponification. And the reaction is given. So if there is fat, it is reacted with 3 moles of NaOH to give soap, that is sodium carboxylate, and glycerol. Then esters, if we see how they get reduced, so they get reduced to give alcohol, and like 2 kind of alcohol we get. So some of the examples are also given over here. You can just go through it. So if acid chloride, it gets hydrolyzed, we get a product. You know what is the product because you've done it. Okay, so this is for your practice. So I'm not going through it. Then we see some of the uses of carboxylic acid. So firstly, they are used as food preservatives. So for example, benzoic acid, and its sodium salt, it is used as a preservative. Then why are they used? Because they prevent microbial growth and spoilage. They are also used in sauces, and like the seafood sauces and ketchups also, beverages also, fruit juices also, pickled products also. Then as a raw material, so they are also used as raw material. So one common polymer is nylon 66, which is a condensation polymer formed by hexane dioyl dichloride with hexane 1,6-diol. The reaction is also given 6,6 because both the reactants have 6 carbon atoms. Why nylon 66 is used? Because it is a good polymer. It drip dries easily. It is not easily attacked by insects, and it resists creasing, so no iron is required. And it is also used for making ropes, threads, cords, and various other things. You can see. Then pterylene is another polymer. It is a polyester, so it is a polymer of ester, and it is formed by acid hydrolysis, acid condensation of benzene 1,4-dioic acid and ethene 1,2-diol. It is used to make wash and wear garments. Then they are also used as solvents. So liquid esters, they are used as solvent for many purposes, like all purpose adhesive, for thinner, and for nail varnish removers also. So they are used as solvents. Then as flavoring agents, like because they have fruity smell, characteristic fruity smell esters. And that is why they are used as artificial flavorants in food processing industry. Then some of the esters which are found in nature are also shown, like banana has an ester, apple has an ester, apricot, pineapple, rum, grape, wintergreen. Alright, so I will just stop here for a while and I will change my slide because we need to start with the next topic, that is ethers and epoxides. Alright students, now we will start with the next topic, that is ethers and epoxides. This is also part of the second unit, that is carboxylic acid and derivatives of your fifth semester. So first we will see what are ethers. So ethers have two functional groups, two organic groups, and both the alkyl groups, they are connected by an oxygen. So if we see the general formula, so it is ROR. If both the alkyl groups are same, it is or identical, it is called as symmetrical ether. If they are not same, it is called as unsymmetrical ether. And oxygen atom in this ether molecule is sp3 hybridized, and that is why if you see the structure, it is nearly, the geometry, it is nearly tetrahedral. Then here at the bottom, structure of ether is given. You can just go through it. This is for your making your notes. Like I just told, symmetrical ethers and unsymmetrical ethers. Then if you see the nomenclature, so the simple ethers, they are assigned common names. So first of all, what is done? You name both the alkyl groups bonded to the oxygen atom and arrange them alphabetically and add the word ether. For example, like for symmetrical ethers, like symmetrical means when both the alkyl groups are same. So name the alkyl group and add the prefix di. For example, if both the groups are methyl, so it will be called dimethyl ether. Both are ethyl, it will be called diethyl ether. If one is methyl, other is isobutyl or secondary butyl, so it will be called secondary butyl methyl ether. Why? Because butyl B becomes first alphabetically than M. Now if you see the IUPAC nomenclature, so what is done is that one alkyl group is named as a hydrocarbon chain and the other is named as part of the substituent bonded to that chain. So how it is done? Firstly, name the simpler alkyl group as the alkoxy substituent and change the il, for example, alkyl to alkoxy. So methyl to methoxy, ethyl to ethoxy, tertiary butyl to tertiary butoxy. Then there are polyethers also. Polyethers means when they have more than two or more than one ether groups or ether linkage. So they are called as oxa derivatives. And while naming them, we have to remember that when we name the whole molecule, we have to give the name corresponding to total number of carbon and oxygen atoms. For example, if we see the first example, so there are 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 carbons plus 2 oxygens, so 7. So we will name it dioxa because two ether functional groups are present. So dioxaheptane. In the next example, if you see there are 1, 2, 3, 4 carbon atoms, but 1 oxygen atom, so 5. So it will be pentane. So 2-oxapentane. Then there are cyclic ether also. That means ethers having cyclic structure. They are also called as epoxide or oxyranes. They are also called as alkene oxides. So when it is a three-membered, example is epoxy ethene or ethylene oxide, we call it. When there is a derivative also, because there are three carbons, it will be called propylene oxide. When there are 4 carbons, it will be called as butylene oxide. Now the general name, if we see, so when there are three, it is a 3-membered ring and 1 oxygen atom included in it, it will be called oxyrane or ethylene oxide. When it is 3 carbons and 1 oxygen, it is a square-shaped structure, it is called oxytane or propylene oxide. When it is 5-membered ring with an oxygen atom, so it is called as furan, tetrahydrofuran or oxalane. When there are it is a 6-membered ring, including one oxygen atom. It is called as oxanol tetrahydropyrin. So these are the general names and the IUPAC name also. Now, if we see the isomerism, yes, there does exist some isomerism in ethers. One is metamerism and the other is functional group isomerism. Metamerism means if there is an ether group or an oxygen atom, then both, like two sides on either side of the oxygen atom, groups, different alkyl groups are present. So it could be same also. It will be called diethyl ether. If it is different, so it will be called methyl propyl ether. So if you compare both of them, diethyl ether and methyl propyl ether, the structural formula is same, but it's just the difference of the arrangement of atoms. So in one of the molecule, oxygen has two ethyl groups on either side of it. On the other, it has total 4 carbons, but 3 on one side, 1 on the other side. So this is what metamerism is. Other possibility is the presence of functional group isomerism. So we know that having the same formula C2H6O, there are two possibilities in terms of functional group. There could be an ether group, that is dimethyl ether, or there could be an alcohol group, that is ethanol. So ethanol and diethyl ether are related through functional group isomerism. Now let us see some of the methods of preparation of alcohols. So, preparation of ethers. So first is the dehydration of alcohols. So what happens is that when ethers, symmetrical ethers, they can be prepared by heating excess of alcohol with concentrated H2SO4 at 140 degrees. Now, why this condition is required? Because alkene formation is favored at higher temperature and is secondary or tertiary alcohol. So the first condition is that the alcohol that we are using should be primary and the temperature must be maintained at 140. Why? Because if the temperature is increased or if the alkyl halide is not primary but secondary or tertiary, then the product will not be ether, rather it will be an alkene. So this is very important point to remember. Now let us see the mechanism. So first step, H plus, because it is acid catalyzed reaction, it forms and there is a protonated alcohol. Next step, it will give a carb cation, which will again react with another neutral alcohol molecule to give oxonium ion, from which H plus is again released and we get diethyl ether. Second method of preparation is from alkyl halide. So it is one of the best methods for preparation of ether. So it involves treatment of sodium alkoxide. So first we have to prepare sodium alkoxide. That means alcohol will react with sodium metal to give its respective salt, sodium alkoxide. This then reacts with alkyl halide and the byproduct is sodium halide and ether. Similar to aliphatic member, aryl derivative is also formed. So if we use sodium phenoxide, then react with methyl bromide, then we get anisole. This reaction is actually named under Williamson ether synthesis. So if you have to remember Williamson ether synthesis, so it is basically reaction of the metal alkoxide RONA with alkyl halide RX, and we get the product is ROR or ROR dash, which is ether. Now the condition is again the alkyl halide should be primary. And if we see the mechanism, it is SN2 mechanism. SN2 means it occurs in one step and the attack is from the back side. So mechanism is given over here. Again, the condition is that the reaction should have primary alkyl halide, because if secondary or tertiary alkyl halide is used, then it may lead to alkene formation. Now, there are certain limitations to this reaction. First is that the alkyl halide, the aryl and vinyl halide, they cannot be used as substrate in this method. Why? Because they are less reactive. Secondly, what is the necessary condition is also the limitation of this reaction, that secondary and tertiary alkyl halides, which are very prone to elimination and they give alkene, they should be avoided as substrate. So, for example, tertiary butyl ethyl ether can be prepared either by the reaction of tertiary butoxide ion with ethyl bromide or by action of ethoxide on tertiary butyl bromide. Now, it is always preferable that the primary alkyl halide is used as substrate than the tertiary alkyl halide. Why? Because we don't want to get any elimination product or alkene. Next important reaction is alkoxymercuration demercuration. Now, in this method, alkenes, they react with mercuric trifluoroacetate, that is CF3COO whole twice Hg. In the presence of alcohol, this reaction occurs, and eventually the intermediate is made to reduce with sodium borohydride in basic condition to give the ethoxy product or the ether. Now this reaction, it may seem complicated, but it is actually practical. It is more advantageous than the Williamson method. Why? Because firstly, it has been found that it gives higher yield of the ethers, and secondly, there is no rearrangement required, and also no competing elimination. So there is no fear of elimination reaction or formation of an alkene is there in this reaction. Next, we see the action of diazomethane on alcohol. So, diazomethane is what? CH2N2. This reaction occurs in the presence of HbF4, that is fluoroboric acid, as catalyst. Simply CH2N2, it breaks down such that N2 gets released and the CH2 gets incorporated in the alcohol, and we get the respective ether. The next is the treatment of alkyl halide with dry silver oxide. So alkyl halide, when two alkyl halide molecule reacts with silver oxide, we get AgCl and diethyl ether as the product. Let us see some of the physical properties of ethers. So as we know that oxygen is sp3 hybridized, so there is tetrahedral arrangement and the bond angle must be 109.5, and they are polar. Ethers are polar, but there is no hydrogen bonding. Melting point, boiling point, if we see, so they are moderate and they are not soluble in water. And ethers and epoxides, they exhibit dipole interaction. Why? Because they have a bent structure with two polar bonds. Now diethyl ether, it is also very important because it is used as organic solvent. It is polar, it is water insoluble, it has a boiling point of 35 degrees, and it is very explosive and flammable. Now before starting, let me just wait for a while. All right. So now let us see the chemical reactions of ethers. So first is the reaction of the ethereal oxygen. So when the oxygen atom of the ether group is being attacked. So first is the action of concentrated acid. So because oxygen has two lone pair of electrons, so it behaves as Lewis base, and so it reacts with acids easily. And the intermediate is an oxonium salt. Sorry, the final product is an oxonium salt. Next is the formation of coordination complex. So simply because of the presence of lone pair of electron, it forms coordination complex. That means coordinate bond. So oxygen atom donates its lone pair of electron to an electron deficient group like BF3, and it forms a coordination bond, a coordination complex. Then there is a reaction. There is reaction where the CO, the ether group has CO bond cleavage. So first is the reaction with halogen acid. The product is alcohol and alkyl halide. Now in this reaction, if we use excess of acid, then what happens? The alcohol, which is formed, it further reacts with the acid to form the corresponding alkyl halide. Again, you see, if you see the mechanism, so the reaction is actually acid cleavage. The same reaction is given at the bottom also. If we see the mechanism, this reaction occurs in the presence of cold. So there is a protonated ether, which is formed as a transition state, and finally we get the alkyl halide and alcohol. So depending upon, like there could be two possibilities depending upon the nature of the alkyl group. So there could be SN1 mechanism also or SN2 mechanism also. So when there is SN2 mechanism, so there is backside attack and we get an alkyl halide and an alcohol with involvement of a transition state. If it is SN1 mechanism, so we know that it will occur in two steps. So in the first step, carb cation will be formed, which then combines with the halogen to form alkyl halide. The same is given at the bottom also. You can just go through it. The next is a side cleavage. So sometimes what happens is that the ether group has everything intact, only the alkyl group, it gets replaced. So like ethyl methyl ether, the methyl group goes with the iodide, forming ethanol. Now in case of, if we see the aryl, alkyl aryl and diaryl ethers, product is always phenol and an alkyl halide and never an aryl halide and an alcohol. So we see if we react aniso with HI, then we will get the so we will always get favorable product will be what? there could be two possibilities. Either CH3 can combine with hydrogen or it can combine with iodine also. No, sorry, either CH. So either an alcohol will be formed and CH3I will be formed, which is usually the reaction, or the reverse could also happen, that iodide gets formed and methanol is formed. But this reaction doesn't happen. It has been found that only it is always not the iodide but the alkophenol which is formed. Now there is another very important method that is called the Z-cell method. It is used for estimation of methoxy or ethoxy or the alkoxy group. So what is done? It is first of all the ethoxyalkane is, or the arene is weighed and it is heated with HI. So it gives alcohol and alkyl halide. Then this alkyl halide then made to react with silver nitrate. So silver iodide will be precipitated. Then how do we check it now? Now you see. So there is reaction between ether and HI. Alcohol and methyl iodide is formed. Now this methoxy group which is liberated, it is absorbed in silver nitrate solution and we get silver iodide as precipitate. Now this precipitate is collected, washed, dried and weighed. Now we see that since 1 mole of silver iodide precipitate, it corresponds to presence of one methoxy group. So there was one methoxy group, that is why one silver iodide is being precipitated. So we use the same concept for calculation. So if we have taken the sample as W1 grams and silver iodide which is formed is W2, from the reaction if we equate, we see that 1 mole of silver iodide equals to how much? 234 grams, and 1 mole of OCH3 equals how much? 31 grams. So if we see the percentage, we cross multiply and we finally get this formula. So here it is given also at the bottom also. So if we are taking in terms of methoxy, so the formula used will be 31 upon 234 into W2 upon W1 into 100. And if we use ethoxy, 31 will be replaced by 45. So this is in this way we can check the number of methoxy groups in the compound using this formula, where M is the molecular mass of the sample taken. Okay. So this we will take up last topic for today, this slide, then we will do the next in the next part. So reactions involving the alkyl group. So one is the auto-oxidation or the formation of peroxide. So when ethers, when they are kept for long, they get self-oxidized or auto-oxidation and they give peroxide. Now it is very dangerous because this peroxide when kept over a long period of time, it can accumulate and it can cause an explosion also. So that is why ether should not be evaporated to dryness. Second is the halogenation. So when ether is treated with halogen, like chlorine or bromine in the dark, then substitution products are obtained. And the extent of this substitution, it also depends upon the reaction condition. For example, when diethyl ether, it is made to react with chlorine. So there are two di-substituted chlorine or dichlorodiethyl ether is obtained. So I think students, I will stop here. We will continue the next in the remaining part of this ethers and epoxide in the next lecture. Thank you.